In today's Hidden Gems, we are taking a look at Electronic Arts' Haunting for the Sega Genesis. You play as the Poltergeist, a dead rebel teen who sports a mohawk and leather jacket. Your objective is to scare each member of the Sardini family out of their house. Once you scare the living hell out of all of them, they move to a new house where you repeat your scares for a total of 4 houses. With the overhead perspective, you go from room to room, searching out each family member while possessing an object in the room to scare them out of their shorts with. Minus the spinning head and green vomit, of course. For example, if you're in the garage, you can possess a chainsaw and chase the family member all around with it. Or if you're in the bathroom, you can possess the toilet and make it come to life, or have an eyeball pop out of the sink. Throughout the game, you can possess up to 400 objects. Now, the only way the Poltergeist can physically die or take damage is when he is sent to the underworld. During the game, you have a certain amount of time to scare the family out of their house. Once the ecto energy meter bar runs out, your time is up and you are sent to the underworld to get more ecto. Once in the underworld, you must move quickly to find the exit and pick up all the green drops of ecto falling from the sky before they slowly shrink and disappear, all while avoiding traps and monsters that will attack you. There is a portrait of the Poltergeist that represents his health in the underworld. Each time he takes damage, the portrait gets smaller until only his eyes remain. Throughout the game, the Poltergeist will encounter 12 different underworlds that repeat themselves over the course of the game. Scare the Sardini family successfully out of all 4 houses, and you will have beaten the game.
If you'd like to play a pretty similar game to Haunting, check out Ghostmaster on the PC, which has a very similar style of gameplay. So now let's check out the Video Game Trader price guide to find out what your classic video games are worth.
Just got back from the flea market with a box full of some Atari 2600, Sega Genesis, or NES games, and curious like a little kid at Christmas to find out what they're worth? Video Game Trader's price guide has you covered. So here we take a look at Magical Chase, a side-scrolling shooter for the TurboGrafx-16 released in 1993. The reason why Magical Chase is so collectible is because it came out in limited quantities during the end of the TurboGrafx run. Also, Magical Chase usually tends to be a missing link in every Turbo Collector's collection, which makes it that much more sought after. And it doesn't hurt that the game is very fun and addicting. Magical Chase is the rarest game for the TurboGrafx-16, but if you're willing to dish out a little dough and do some heavy searching, this game can be yours. Magical Chase is worth $200 complete in box. For a complete copy, make sure it has the cardboard box with it. With the cult following and high demand for classic video games, this gives a great opportunity for classic video game designers to continue to develop and release classic video games. In our Homebrew segment, we find the latest in homebrews from your favorite designers. On today's episode, we're taking a look at Actionauts for the Atari 2600 from classic video game alumni, Mr. Rob Fulop. To find out more on Actionauts, we interviewed the man himself. Alrighty, we have a special Halloween treat for all our viewers. I'm here with Mr. Rob Fulop, the gentleman who is responsible for bringing us such classics as Night Trap for the Sega CD, as well as the home ports of Missile Command for the Atari 2600 and Space Invaders for the Atari 800 computer. Also, some of Mr. Fulop's ventures include Magic, Perchance, and PF Magic. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Fulop. Let's get started.
Great.
To give our viewers more insight, how did you get started in the industry, and where has it taken you over the years?
I actually was a junior in college in University of California, Berkeley, and it was 1979, and I had gone to the job board and found a job that was talking about doing sound effects for pinball games at a company I'd never heard of called Atari. Mm-hmm. And I went down to the job board and got myself an interview, and actually they hired me on the spot, which never really made sense because I never had any experience at all. But I was very into games and basically was in the video game business basically for the whole ride, and still in it. I mean, I've made interactive games basically all of my working life.
Great. Now, Actionauts was originally intended to be released on the Atari 2600
Right.
back in 1984.
Right.
Would you care to share with us the story behind that?
Actionauts was the last 2600 Atari Video Computer System game that I did. I was doing independent development at the time. I was looking to do something a little bit more maybe enriching, or not so much, your classic shooter, which is what I had done previously with a lot of games. And it was during that year where actually there was a lot of fuss about these things from Japan called transformers. There were little robots that would open up and become, bigger robots. So the thinking was, let's make a game that let the kids program a robot. The very, very, very simple, computer programming flow. And so basically it was that was the motivation: make something out of robots that was current and trendy, and let kids learn a little bit about how to program a computer.
Okay, great. And what made you feel that now was the right time to release Action Knots?
I was cleaning out my office, and there was a box with all this old stuff from the Atari VCS, and I said, I should probably do this. Put this out there finally. There was absolutely no particular strategy behind it other than this had been sitting in a box for long enough in my closet, and decided might as well put it out there.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's a great market for homebrews, and Classic Gaming Expo and shows like that are definitely releasing them, so this is really great. Can you describe to us the gameplay?
The gameplay of Action Knots, again, to be clear, the game was never released at the time, and when someone doesn't release a game, or when any designer doesn't release something they made, there's probably a reason. And the reason in this case was the game just wasn't good enough compared to the kind of work that was being put out at the time, and the market was coming down. So the game, I'm not saying it was bad, it just wasn't, I don't look at it as my best work, which is why I didn't release it. But the gameplay involves you programming a little robot with a series of icons, kind of like the toy. There's an old toy called Big Track. It's a little robot, and you had to kind of figure out, how do I program the robot to get through a little maze? So I had to learn some basic sequential logic, and what I learned in making it was that I really needed a computer to play the game. So I basically ported what I had to the Commodore 64, where I made another version of the game that was much more sophisticated, because the Commodore computer had memory and a keyboard and all the stuff you need to really kind of program a computer. But the gameplay was basically, keep track of a maze in your head and program a robot by coming up with steps to get through the maze.
Okay. And what kind of experience do you feel classic gamers will have when they pick up and play Action Knots nowadays?
What kind of experience they will have? The game works. You can do a search on YouTube or Google, and you can see all kinds of people playing it. There's a couple of videos that are up there that people have made. The experience is very much like playing a computer game, a little bit of an educational computer game. You will not have the kind of classic shoot all the bad guys experience that was predominantly, the case in most of the games at the time. So it really is a different kind of experience on the VCS. But it's a puzzle game. It's not an action game.
Okay. Now, do you have any plans to bring any more homebrew titles to classic gamers in the future?
I don't have any more. The problem with classic games, we can't make them up. They have to exist. There was a game that I made at Atari before I left to join Imagic that I don't have, and it's never been. There was one copy of it, and we tested it, and it didn't get a strong reaction, so we basically didn't release it. And I would love to find the archives of Atari, which exists somewhere, and see if I could find the tape that had all those things were stored on tape, not on disc. If I could, find the data that made up that game, because it was the last game that I did that was never released.
Oh wow!
But yes, I have no plans. I have no games. The old classic games to release.
All right, cool, no problem. Well, I'm sure Action Knots will definitely hold a lot of fans over. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to pick up a copy. Now, if we could take a time machine back to the 80s, what arcade game would we find you playing?
I really liked Missile Command.
Missile Command?
I just liked the game because you didn't have to be dead on accurate. You could just be close, as you say, horseshoes, hand grenades, and nuclear war. You don't have to be that accurate. With Missile Command, that's the case. You just don't have to be dead on accurate. If you're close, that's fine. It's more of a visceral experience. So I just always like that lack of need of accuracy.
All right, everyone, that's all the time we have with Mr. Fulop. Thank you again for taking the time to speak with us. It's been a real pleasure and honor.
Great, thank you. This is great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fulop. It was a great honor interviewing Mr. Fulop. If you'd like to learn more about this classic gaming alumni, be sure to visit his website at www.robfulop.com. You can also read a review of Actionauts by Video Game Trader's Peter G. in this month's issue. Also, for the full interview, be sure to check out an upcoming issue of Video Game Trader magazine. Now it's time to see what's hot overseas in our import segment.